So it's 2021. The year has not been kind to us once again. I've been saying that since 2020. Hopefully I don't have to say it at the end of 2022. Pandemic aside, and everything else that hasn't been kind to us this year, these artists that I'm about to name, who I've given the worst albums of 2021 to, also were not considered enough to release something enjoyable enough to get us through such harsh time. And the first artist I feel is like the obligatory DJ Khaled. Khaled released Khaled, you know, this year. Imagining two Khalids, like one back to back. That should have been the warning that this was going to be horrible. It's crazy my expectation of the average Khaled record post 2017 has just been complete garbage. He hasn't given me a reason to have faith in him, a reason to have faith in the people that he works with. I don't even think they care about their performances on his records, which is indicative of how they view him, that you are so willing to hand this man trash because you know his reputation in music pretty much means nothing. There's no sense of direction, complete lack of cohesion, extremely glossy, gentrified, and over-processed beats. When Nas is on your album talking about cryptocurrency, bro, you just hang it up. Next on this list is Meek Mill. I don't know when it happened, but it's like everything Meek Mill does, all I think about is you 36. And he's not 36, but everything he does, I'm like looking at and I have to question, like, bro, you a grown ass man. And this album, all of it just feels like Lil Durk impersonations. You know, Meek Mill's attempt at trying to be the most melodic rapper humanly possible, not doing it nearly as well as a Durk or mainly Durk. And on one hand, I don't really hate this album or despise it because it's like that objectively bad. I'm just disappointed because at this point I expect so much more from Meek Mill, the person that he's promoted himself to be. Why we're getting such a huge regression in content, such a lack of creativity, and overall uninspired ideas for these songs at this point in his career is just kind of like blah. I mean, you gotta remember, I started listening to Meek Mill back in 2012, 2013, when these Dreams and Nightmares intros were happening. Like, bro, that hit different. If we're judging it simply based off of career evolution, I feel like Meek Mill is the biggest example of getting to the top and doing absolutely nothing with it. You'd expect there to be a huge dichotomy between Meek Mill and his peers or even the people that came after him, but there genuinely isn't one. This picture was all I thought about while listening to Expensive Pain. Speaking of another person doing nothing with their success at the moment, Drake. Now, originally, Certified Lover Boy, to me, was nowhere near as bad as I feel like a ton of people were making it out to be. I genuinely felt that way, right? But a little bit of time passed and I noticed that I wasn't returning to nearly as many of the songs that I liked when it first came out. And sometimes that happens, you know. A couple of the songs that you enjoy off first listen, you listen to them a little longer. Okay, maybe this wasn't the one. Maybe this one, you know, I didn't like as much. Maybe it's not that great, but you know, it's listenable. But see, I feel that way about like almost every song that I liked in the beginning. In the Bible is literally carried by Lil Durk and Giveon. The Love All track is literally carried by Jay-Z. Fair Trade is like the Down syndrome version of Sicko Mode. Fountains is carried by Tim's. Get Along Better literally just reminds me of Music Soul Child. But that's not entirely the reason why this album ends up being extremely disappointing. Half of the records in this album comprise of Kanye West disses and Kanye West back and forths, right? When you put that as a real big centerpiece in your album and then you make up with the nigga two weeks later, the records that are like a bit of the core foundation of your album begin to kind of fall under the weight of you tonguing the nigga down who you just said you'd never sit with again. That isn't me saying that Drake shouldn't be allowed to make amends, make peace, make good with people he had beef with at one point. But there's literally no point in listening to No Friends in the Industry. There's literally no point in listening to 7 a.m. on Bridal Path. Like, all of that is pointless right now. I know some of you will probably be thinking, yo, Shawn, stop the cap. Okay, if Jay-Z and Nas can get over their beef, why can't Drake and Kanye? Nas and Jay-Z were like battling for the majority of their beef. Like, it was back and forth to a point where these are rappers sparring on a regular and they clearly don't like each other like that. But so much of their beef was comprised of like the spirit of hip hop that they knew it would be entertaining to just keep that type of energy going. But Nas and Jay-Z don't have multiple records in their albums, really good albums that comprise of disses back and forth at one another. But when you're sneak dissing a nigga making 5-minute records about him, all while not even being able to say the man's name in the song that you're dissing him in, trying to add this massive level of pretentiousness and self-importance to your own life, instead of just saying you feel betrayed by the nigga, now when you make up with him, all the records that you snuck diss him in look corny, they look horrible, they aged really badly. Aside from the Kanye diss records that didn't age well on COB, I'm listening to literally none of the album, outside of a track called Yebba's Heartbreak, who Yebba carries, the Tim's track, who Tim's carries, and In the Bible, who Lil Durk and Giveon carry. If Drake's not talking about being a lesbian or being way too sexy, he's talking about taking advantage of women because they have issues with their parents, and he's like preying on them, hoping that they don't get along with them so he can swoop in and be their save. It's so weird. You 30. I didn't think it was that bad when I listened to it, but the longer I wasn't listening to it, I kept looking back at it like, what the fuck is that? I literally can't listen to the album anymore without adding wrinkles to my forehead. Since we're already talking about Drake, let's attack Canada some more. Let's get on Tory Lanez with Alone at Prom. This album is garbage. And I know the Tory Lanez defense squad, who is more annoying and bitch made than even Megan Thee Stallion fans, Nicki Minaj fans, Doja Cat fans. I mean, Tory Lanez has a pretty emotional fan base. I didn't realize until you criticize him in any fashion. I know they'll probably say anyone who doesn't like Alone at Prom has a problem with Tory Lanez because they feel that they've been brainwashed by the media because they believe that Tory Lanez shot Megan Thee Stallion. I'm here to tell you, I would rather take a bullet in the foot than listen to this shit again. This is the most uninspired 80s homage I think I've ever heard, and I haven't heard many. So often, artists convince their fan base that they're doing something different, but because they're doing something different, that automatically means they're doing that thing different well. And that's not the case. It's very rarely the case. Add that to the fact that most of the people who are saying this thing is so amazing have never really listened to 80s music like that in the first place to know what's good versus what's bad. Yeah, I see why you'd say that this is different and this different thing is done well, despite the fact that I personally just think that it's inspired by The Weeknd taking inspiration from the 80s style and him having such massive success with it. And now Tory Lanez seems to think he can do the same thing, but you're not nearly as talented as a vocalist as The Weeknd for this to work, or for it to be believable, or for it to sound nice in any capacity or convincing. I've always been trying to figure out why I hate Tory Lanez singing, and I think the main reason is because he literally sounds like nothing. His voice is like something you get out of a computer program that you purchased add-ons for. You ever pay for a software and you're missing plugins, and the plugins that you need you have to download from somewhere else? Like, that's what his voice sounds like. It just sounds like a plugin. It doesn't sound like it's natural or it's something that you couldn't buy. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Tory Lanez in any point of this album sounds similar to The Weeknd because The Weeknd also did an 80s homage. I'm just saying he sounds like him because Ballad of Batman literally just sounds like a Blinding Lights ripoff. Creatively, I just feel like there's nothing that Tory Lanez is bringing to the table. Everything that he comes out with is derivative of other artists or something else that already exists in the landscape, and Tory Lanez is trying his best to add to it. So I will give you that he's versatile, but if that versatility doesn't equate into a very solid project where he's at least 90% performing in every aspect of versatility that you claim he has, then what's the point? These songs don't stand out on their own, so the album ends up blending together in a way that you could find on a moody aesthetic playlist on YouTube. If someone came up to me and told me that Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion were arguing in the car over whether or not he should do an 80s album and he kicked her out and shot her in the foot allegedly, I wouldn't call him crazy. The next record is Juice WRLD with Fighting Demons, and after listening to it, I really wish they would allow to occur what the title of his last posthumous record was, which was Legends Never Die. I wish they would just allow him to die. Every album that they drop post Juice WRLD has just cheapened the life that he lived, I feel. They are almost propping him up in this bubble where his corpse can be seen and shown off to his audience, while at the same time highlighting everything that led to his death. And that's every album that I feel like they've dropped since he died. I feel like one of the reasons so many of his audience attached themselves to what he was saying was because they felt similar to him. And I can't imagine the shock they felt when he ultimately passed away. That being said, I don't understand why it would be beneficial to Juice WRLD's legacy or his audience to keep showing or promoting him in ways that exploit the biggest addictions that he was fighting. You're really gonna title an album Fighting Demons with a man who spent his career talking essentially just about that? You don't think it gets disrespectful at some point? Then there are features on this album who I couldn't imagine Juice WRLD would have ever collabed with had he been alive to approve them. There wasn't a record on this entire album that I really liked or enjoyed, and I didn't listen to it with the expectation of such, knowing that the organizers of this album probably cared so little about how it made Juice WRLD as an individual look. But I guess I expected a bit more tact, a little bit more care, a little bit more consideration, at least for the audience that he maintained and developed over the course of his life. This album just feels like a label continuously trying to wring more and more life out of an artist that clearly no longer has any. He was laid to rest in 2019. He's no longer fighting demons. All those songs and records that you people are stealing from his vault, trying to make more and more money off of the struggles that he was dealing with while he was alive, just make you look like shitty people. On to another artist that they probably should have stopped making posthumous releases for after the first one, Pop Smoke. It's almost like they were on a mission to make every record what a Pop Smoke song wouldn't normally sound like. It's almost like this was their best attempt at trying to let people know that this is not some shit he would have done while he was alive. Once again, it's artists happily collaborating with a corpse that they can see is being hung up with a thick layer of rope by the record label, who cares so little about the corpse that they're still trying to profit off of, that they almost make themselves sound like they never listened to his music themselves. Why is Pusha T on a Pop Smoke album? Why wouldn't you try to get artists a little bit more locally? They didn't even have enough material to make an album as long as this one ended up being, and they still attempted it. Every time Justin Bieber releases new music, I just find myself asking why. His new album Justice is really just an injustice. Once again, another tasteless artist taking the words of someone deceased, trying to prop themselves and their own message up above what the person who said these words originally meant. In these poorly mixed, horribly written songs that Justin Bieber has in this Justice album, I don't see what Martin Luther King's correlation to any of this is. Even more distasteful than Justin Bieber using the Martin Luther King sample is UMG claiming it as if they somehow have ownership over Martin Luther King's speeches. That truly was the most shocking thing about Justice. I mean, everything that I hated about Changes, I hate about this album too. Just add the Martin Luther King sample. At one point in the future, Justin Bieber will realize his voice is his strongest attribute, and he can literally just pay someone to write his songs because he sucks at writing them himself. Grab a guitar, grab a piano, grab a violin, and sing. That's literally all you have to do. No one is expecting or wants anything more from you than that. Black people see through you now. You're no longer welcome in R&B and rap. Your 13 to 15-year-old fangirls are grown now. There's no reason for you to still be at the kids' table. You can grow. You can evolve. You don't have to be that same guy. Y'all remember Lil Pump? Me neither. What's that guy doing? This album is literally just Lil Pump trying his best to hold on to and grab onto the lightning in the bottle of popularity that he had back in 2017 with D-Rose, with Esquete. So he requested Ronnie J to come through with those really heavy knocking 808, and did absolutely nothing with the production for over 10 tracks. We have about 2 years left for that J. Cole line in 1985 to come true, where Lil Pump ends up on Love and Hip Hop. We'll see what happens, because it's looking like that might be coming sooner than later. YBN Nahmir came out with VISIONLAND, and y'all know that I was a big YBN Nahmir advocate when he first dropped. When he first came out, I really liked his sound. It reminded me a lot of like Khaled, kind of mixed in with Detroit. I liked his style, I liked his flow, I liked the music that he made for the most part. But this album, bro, I don't know what he was thinking or what he was smoking. There's no personality to grab and hold on to with this album in any capacity at all. I mean, Soul Train is one of the worst songs, not just this year, but of all time. Everything that made YBN Nahmir appealing in the singles that you'd heard before this album, none of that shows up on the album. I don't know if he got too cool to rap or like be a performer, but I really just think he needs to go back to the drawing board and kind of reassess why he became popular in the first place and what people like him for, because I still think that, you know, YBN Nahmir has a good future. You know, the braggadocio, the gangster talk on this album would be a lot more tolerable if it were in any sense of the word believable, but it isn't. If it was delivered with enough energy and enough enthusiasm to kind of make you overlook the fact that he's not the things that he tells you that he is in his songs, you could overlook that, but you really can't, because none of that shows up on this album. Just give your accent back to Mozzie and move back to Alabama, and you know, go back to the drawing board. French Montana came out with an album this year. They got Amnesia. After listening to it, I wish I really did have Amnesia. I don't really have anything to say about this album. Well, that's his album cover. Wow. Even when he looks good, he looks bad. Just go to French Montana's Twitter account. Do something I should have done a very long time ago. All right, I'll see y'all next time.